Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. Markets look for direction, while Nord Stream 2 and SMIC are in the crosshairs. Analysis http ntvforex.com News ID D2679097 2020 11:24:37 am Overview NBSP. The capital markets are looking for fresh directional cues after last week's equity declines and seeming reversal in the US dollar. NBSP. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index fell 1.6% last week, its largest drop since April. NBSP markets in the region were mixed, with Japan, Taiwan, and especially China and Hong Kong moving lower. NBSP European shares are doing better, and the Dow Jones STOXX 600 is recouping most of its pre-weekend losses. NBSP US shares are little changed. NBSP bond markets are quiet. NBSP Asia Pacific bonds seem to play some catch-up after the rise in U.S. yields after the jobs report before the weekend, but today the U.S. 10-year yield is flat around 72 BP, and European benchmark yields are slightly higher. NBSP. The dollar is mostly firmer, with Brexit developments weighing on sterling. NBSP. The pullback in the Canadian and New Zealand dollars and Norwegian krone give a sense of diminished risk appetites. NBSP. This is also the takeaway from the emerging markets currencies, where most of the liquid and accessible currencies, like the South African rand, Turkish lira, Mexican peso, are on the downside. NBSP. Following a larger than expected trade surplus, the Chinese yuan is the strongest of the emerging markets currencies, gaining about 0.15% against the greenback. NBSP. Gold is a little heavy, but within the pre-weekend range, but it looks like it wants to test the $1,900 area. NBSP. October WTI was near $43.50 a week ago. NBSP. It continued last week's decline today to reach $38.55 before finding a bit. NBSP. Demand concerns seem to be behind Saudi Arabia's decision to cut October prices. NBSP. Asia Pacific. China reported August trade figures. NBSP. Exports were stronger than expected, rising 9.5% from a year ago, while imports were weaker than anticipated, dropping 2.1%. NBSP. The median forecasts in the Bloomberg survey were for a 7.5% rise in exports and a 0.2% decline in imports. NBSP. The result was a $58.90 BLN surplus, about $9 BLN larger than projected, but smaller sequentially from July's $62.30 BLN surplus. NBSP. The particularly politically sensitive bilateral surplus with the U.S. rose to its highest since November 2018. NBSP. Imports from the U.S. increased by about 1.8% from a year ago. NBSP. A couple of additional details are notable. NBSP. First, China's exports of textiles, which include some masks, rose by a third. NBSP. Electronic exports also rose. NBSP. Second, the decline in imports seemed like a function of falling prices. NBSP. In discussions of Chinese trade, rarely are the terms of trade or prices integrated into the analysis. NBSP. Third, China's iron ore imports fell by 11%, and this, in part, reflects the sharp drop in imports from Australia 26.2% amid growing tensions in the bilateral relationship. NBSP. The U.S. effort to limit China's ability to secure and develop its semiconductor business may be on the verge of a new step. NBSP. Reports suggest it is considering blacklisting SMIC Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, China's largest semiconductor foundry. Ostensibly, the argument is that it has ties to the Chinese military. NBSP. It secures about 50% of its fabrication equipment from U.S. producers. NBSP. Its shares fell, as did the shares of other Chinese semiconductor companies. Such action would be seen as an escalation. It would likely encourage China to redouble its own efforts, expected to be in the next 5-year plan, to become a world-class semiconductor producer and reinforce the drive to be self-sufficient import substitution. NBSP. For the third session, the dollar has held above 106 Japanese yen. NBSP it has been confined to about a quarter of a yen range above 106 Japanese yen and 15 sen. NBSP nearby resistance is seen in the 106 Japanese yen and 40 sen 106 Japanese yen and 50 sen area, but the more important cap is near 107 Japanese yen, where a $1.40 BLN option expires tomorrow. NBSP the Australian dollar recovered from around $0.7220 to $0.7300 before the weekend and is consolidating today in the upper end of that range. NBSP support emerged near $0.7270, and it has not traded above $0.7300 today. NBSP the PBOC set the dollar's reference rate at 6.8386 Chinese yuan, in line with the bank models. NBSP recall that the yuan has appreciated against the dollar for the past 6 weeks. NBSP China's August reserves rose by $10.20 BLN to $3.165 trillion, which was about half the increase expected in the Reuters survey. NBSP China's reserves rose by a little more than $42 BLN in July, which we suspect was largely a function of valuation. The non-dollar components appreciated sharply. NBSP Europe Nord Stream 2, a pipeline for Russian gas that bypasses Ukraine and goes below the Black Sea directly to Germany, has been controversial since day one. NBSP despite some international pressure, which included sanctions by the US, Germany has pressed ahead. NBSP reports suggest the pipeline is more than 90% completed. NBSP in light of the Novichok poisoning of Navalny, a vocal critic of Putin, Germany is threatening to end the project. NBSP Russia has a few days to respond. NBSP if it does, a large payment is due to Gazprom. NBSP the US position seemed nuanced. NBSP on the one hand, the US has been critical of the pipeline because it increases German dependence on Russia. NBSP on the other hand, the US wants to provide more gas to Europe, and US crude oil and unfinished fuel imports from Russia rose to 96.07 MLN barrels in the first half of this year compared with 78.2 MLN barrels in H1-19. While reluctant to impute a strategic view to Trump administration's attitude toward Russia, one cannot help to recall that Nixon-Kissinger worked to open up relations with China, not because they thought it could become like the West. NBSP the China card played in the context of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. NBSP if there is a Cold War with China, like many, including ourselves, suggest, then the Russian card could be played to help check China. NBSP that said, Russia's behavior on the international stage is too odious, and the threat from China not sufficiently urgent to overcome this critical obstacle. A UK paper recycled the possibility that in the trade talks with the EU, it threatens access to its capital markets unless Brussels compromises. NBSP such a move, until now, has been rejected for good reasons. NBSP it would threaten the special role of London in global finance. NBSP for sure, the UK can inflict some short-term pain and disruption on European companies and their capital-raising mechanisms, but the medium and long-term damage could be significant. NBSP Continental Europe has long wanted its own world-class financial centre. NBSP the UK leaving the EU may be a challenge for London. Denying European companies access would likely expedite a process. More credibly, the Financial Times reported that the UK government is going to submit legislation as early as midweek that overrides key sections of the withdrawal agreement relating to state aid and, critically, Northern Irish customs. NBSP the implementation of the withdrawal agreement is the keystone upon which the current trade negotiations are predicated. NBSP the government will likely claim it is merely reinterpreting the withdrawal bill and the Northern Ireland Protocol. Still, Brussels will see it as the coup de grace of talks that the UK was not particularly serious about from the get-go. NBSP negotiations are to resume tomorrow, but surely these reports cast a pall over them. NBSP following a disappointing factory orders report before the weekend 2.8% instead of 5%, Germany reported that July industrial output increased by only 1.2%. NBSP. The median forecast in the Bloomberg survey was for a 4.5% increase after the 8.9% rise in June. NBSP strength was seen in the auto sector, while machinery output fell. NBSP. The government estimates that industry is about 90% back to pre-crisis levels. NBSP. The euro has been confined to about a quarter-cent range above $1.1825. NBSP. The euro found support in the last two sessions in the $1.1780–1.1790 area. NBSP. However, many participants seem reluctant to bid it up ahead of the ECB meeting on Thursday. NBSP. There are about 1.2 BLN euro in options in the $1.1800–1.1810 that expire today and about 1.9 BLN euros in options that expire tomorrow at $1.19. NBSP sterling is near the pre-weekend low around $1.3175. NBSP. It has fallen steadily today after rebounded to almost $1.33 in late activity before the weekend. NBSP. The brinkmanship over Brexit trade talks could see sterling test stronger support near $1.30. NBSP. The euro is also rebounding against sterling after testing 3-month lows last week. 0.8865 pounds sterling. NBSP. The near-term potential is towards 0.9000 pounds sterling. 0.9030 pounds sterling. NBSP. America. Last week's employment data was sufficiently strong as to diminish further the likelihood that another stimulus bill will be agreed upon between the White House and the House of Representatives. NBSP. The 1.4 million jobs created were flattened by 250,000 temporary census workers. NBSP. Around 1 million private sector workers returned to their jobs, and retail and restaurant employment picked up. NBSP. Still, to keep these large numbers in perspective, consider that the U.S. has about 11.5 million fewer jobs in August than it did in February. NBSP. The number of job losses that are permanent rose to 3.4 million in August from 2.9 million in July. NBSP. The larger than expected drop in the unemployment rate to 8.4% from 10.2% may have been bolstered by the return of self-employed and gig workers whose extended benefits expired in July. NBSP. The U.S. data highlight of the week may be the August CPI on Friday. NBSP. The headline is expected to tick up to 1.2% from 1.0%, while the core rate is forecast to be unchanged at 1.6%. NBSP. Canada reported strong August jobs growth. NBSP. The nearly 246,000 jobs created was near estimates, but unlike in July, the lion's share of the jobs were full-time positions, almost 206,000. NBSP. The highlight of the week is the Bank of Canada meeting on Wednesday. NBSP. We don't expect fresh initiatives, though it will likely reassure investors and businesses that it is prepared to act if necessary. NBSP. The ball is really in the government's hand, and the opening of the Parliament session later this month is seen as the next key event. NBSP. Mexico reports August CPI and industrial output figures this week. NBSP. Both are expected to tick up. NBSP. Mexico's central bank meets on September 24, and the scope for near-term easing is limited. NBSP. Mexico is likely to stand pat. NBSP. The US dollar briefly dipped below 1.3000 Canadian dollars early last week but has since found support in the 1.3030 Canadian dollars 1.3040 Canadian dollars area. Initial resistance has been encountered in the 1.3140 Canadian dollars 1.3160 Canadian dollars area. NBSP. The 20-day moving average, which the greenback has not traded above since the third week in July, is near 1.3160 Canadian dollars. NBSP. A break above there could spur a move toward 1.3240 Canadian dollars. The US dollar fell against the Mexican peso for the fourth consecutive week and frayed its 200-day moving average 21.5280 Mexican pesos for the first time since early this year. NBSP. Amid a bout of profit-taking, initial resistance is seen near 21 Mexican pesos and 80 centavos and then 22 Mexican pesos. NBSP. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me/mt5.expert.advisors.